Hi everyone, my name is Alicia Pettit and I'm going to be your instructor for the summer session of the Anthropology 110L lab. I'm actually in the lab right now. So how this will work, like in a very simple explanation for the semester, is we have a lot that's kind of cram-packed into 4 weeks. We only meet 2 times a week, and so the time that we actually spend in the lab is going to be like all the hands-on actual lab stuff. So we're going to get these little lectures out of the way with these recordings. So ideally, you would watch these before you come into class. You know, everyone's going to be a little different in their style of studying, but I would say that's probably the best way to go. Probably what's going to happen is when you come into class, I might give a 5-minute kind of review, like, hey, you should have seen X, Y, Z in the video, and then we'll get right into the hands-on stuff. Because we, like I said, we have a lot to do and a lot less time to do it than a normal semester. So we're going to make it work. It's going to be fun. Hopefully, you know, usually as in the class, we get some interesting discussions and some fun exercises, so it'll be good. So this PowerPoint right now, this lecture right now and the PowerPoint I'm going to refer to, this is just introduction. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about myself. The next recording will be about the syllabus and so on and so forth, you know. So the PowerPoint is uploaded into Canvas, so you can follow along. If you want to see some like images, I have some images. I'm going to talk about it right now, but if you want to see some actual like images to follow along, you can do that. So it's going to be the PowerPoint that says like introductions or something like that. So a little bit about me. Let's talk about that. So you can see this image. I have red hair in that first image. Gosh, this is back in 2015, yeah, that's when I got my master's degree. So, you know, a lot of life changes, a lot of hair changes since then. But you can see, if you're following along in the PowerPoint, you can see just my academic credentials. So I received my bachelor's from CSU Sacramento. I then also received my master's in anthropology from CSU Sacramento, and I'm actually working on my PhD right now, and through UNLV. And in fact, I'm at the very, very, very end. So depending on when our class ends, I might have finished, but it might be more like early July. So, but either way, it's going to be happening this summer that I'll have all of that wrapped up. So basically, you know, the peak of any, you know, your academic career. I've been doing it all. So I'm finally at the very end, so that's pretty cool. And my bachelor's and my master's are both in anthropology. My PhD is, you get to get a little more specific with the PhD. So my PhD is in paleoanthropology. So that's one of the sections of this class we will actually talk about. It's the 4th section. The class is kind of split up into 4 sections. You'll see that in the lab book too. So I don't want to get into too much of the syllabus stuff. We'll do that in another section. So moving on along, how many of you signed up for this class because you heard or you saw my good reviews on Rate My Professor? This is a point of pride for me. I do feel like the class, any class I teach, whether it's this one or a lecture, I feel like I definitely try to keep things fun and interesting. I want you guys to enjoy learning. You know, I have a little leeway with what I can do in terms of what's required and you know what's not. But certain things, you know, we have to do in class, you know. But I do have a lot of leeway with what and how I present things. So I try to keep it fun and interesting. So I feel like these reviews are true, and I'm definitely like an easy grader. I have a lot of patience with my students for the most part. So and I'll probably say the same thing to you guys in person and throughout the semester. The best way to accomplish, like, you know, to be successful in this class is to communicate with me. You can, you know, if you have any issues that come up, the best thing is just to communicate. I mean, I get it. We're all adults, right? We all have lives. Things happen. You get called into work, babysitter, calls, emergency, flat tire, whatever it is. So as long as you're communicating with me, we can kind of work with assignments and stuff. We'll try to make it work. Like, I'm not here to make you fail. You know what I mean? So, okay. So I feel like those reviews are pretty true. I feel like the class is usually fun and easy. It's not too difficult. You have to be here and you have to study a little bit. You know, I mean, it is a class, but I try to make it fun, you know. Okay. The next slide. So who of you has as like a celebrity doppelganger. Do you guys ever get that where someone will say, "Oh, you look like so and so"? I get that a lot, right? When I was younger, I'm a natural brunette. When I had brown hair, or when I had like red hair, when I was in my youth, when I dyed it red a lot, I would always get Molly Ringwald, and so you can see that the image of her, and I could kind of see that a little bit. And now I get Mia Goth all the time. I've had quite a few people actually tell me I look like her. Funny enough about doppelgangers, though, I was at the Allegiant Stadium, and I was at a concert. This is probably like a year ago, and I was talking to my friend. We had gone there together, and then I see this woman kind of like in my periphery, and I kind of turned to look at her, and she's like, "Oh my God, I thought you were my friend." And I was like, "Oh, so she looks just like me." She's like, "You guys look very similar." And I said, "I'd love to meet like my real life, Las Vegas doppelganger," but she didn't know where her friend was, so I didn't get to. But I think we probably all have someone out there that, we look like. Just a little fun tidbit. Moving on, so like I already mentioned, I'm what's called a PhD candidate. So in terms of all the academic, just academic terminology in general, you're going to learn a lot this semester. I'll probably talk about it. And like the titles and stuff, especially as you're accomplishing these degrees. So, you go from what you guys are doing now, community college, you get like an associate's, then you go on and get a bachelor's. Then you would, if you want to continue, then you would get a master's degree. And then to get a PhD, the process for a PhD is very specific. Now, it can range, there's a little bit of a range variation with different departments, how they'll do it sometimes. But typically what happens is even with a master's, when you come into a PhD program, you have to do like 2 to 3 years of coursework, like regular coursework, where you're like in seminars, so it's a little different, but you're still like writing papers, you're still reading articles, that kind of thing. And then you have to take your comprehensive exams, and usually you get like a year to study for those. You're reading books, you're reading articles, and basically at the end of these exams, you kind of have the status of like, oh, I am now an expert in like this little field that I'm, researching. And then after that, you have to write your prospectus. Your prospectus is basically your research proposal. And it's very formalized. You have to present it in front of your academic committee and some of the other people who might be in attendance, typically, maybe some of your academic colleagues or, fellow graduate students or something like that might be there. So you present that, and then your research committee says, okay, this looks like a really good project. You can now start your project. And at that point, that's when you are no longer just a PhD student or a graduate student, you become a PhD candidate. Basically, the terminology is just saying this individual is basically at the end, is doing the last step in the process, so they're a candidate for getting their PhD. And then you spend, 2-3 years after that doing your research. Now, for every field of science, it's going to be a little different, It could be your program has a really quick one where everyone kind of does it in a year and a half, or something like what I do with paleoanthropology. You have to spend a lot of time collecting data, traveling as well, so you end up doing more like 2 years, 3 years. So I'll definitely be talking about that in class a bit, and probably in future recordings. So you can see here in the image, though, that's the paleo lab at UNLV, and you can see all of the casts. So we're going to use some of those in class. So basically fossils, not real ones, right? Just for studying purposes, so they can be either like plastic or plaster, different versions of that. So we have a bunch of those. We have some really high quality ones too at UNLV. And you can see in that middle image, I'm working with what's called a microscribe. I'll probably go into that in a little more detail later, but basically it's a tool that we use to collect data when we're looking at an actual like skull or actual specimen in front of us, versus a lot of the other research that I do or ways I collect data is through software like on the computer where I look at CT scans. So there's like a bunch of different ways, right? Moving on to the next slide. Oh, you can just see some of the images I pulled from when I'm collecting data, looking at these different skulls in CT scan form. So like the gorilla, the chimp, got some funny memes throughout, hopefully. If we don't get that, in person like reaction of, I think it's funny, no one laughs, and then I have to laugh at my own joke or whatever. So I'm kind of just laughing to myself. Okay, the next slide. So you'll see all the places that I've worked since I've lived in Vegas. Of course, I was teaching when I lived in California before, I was teaching at 2 different community colleges, and I helped run one of the labs at the university too, where I got my master's. But in Las Vegas, I have worked at the UNLV main campus. I've actually taught the lab there. Then I've also worked at the Kerkorian School of Medicine. I've worked at the UNLV School of Dental Medicine. Both of those I was helping running the anatomy labs. And also, of course, CSN. And I've worked at all the campuses, and I don't think I really have a preference. I kind of like them all, different reasons, like pros and cons, right? I think, yeah, you can see some of the pictures of me at the medical school. We were working with those virtual anatomy tables. Basically, it's like a giant iPad, right? It's like as big as TV screen, if not bigger. But those are pretty cool. We worked with those for many years. I don't work there anymore. I worked there from 2016 till 2023. I think that sounds right. Yeah. And the dental school was 2023 until present. And CSN, I've been working at CSN since 2016. The next few slides just showing you some of cute selfies or photos with friends at conferences, photos of me at my poster presentation. This is just to kind of let you guys know that, because I didn't realize this when I was at your level as a student, which doesn't even seem like it was that long ago, but the fun that you can do at conferences, and you don't have to be a graduate student to go to a conference. You could be an undergrad, and there are different levels of conferences. You can just go and attend and see other interesting research that fellow students are doing. You can go and present. You can have a poster. You can have a talk you give. Usually students, as they kind of further on into their academic career and feel a little more confident, then they'll do a podium talk where they're talking in front of people. But posters are kind of the standard. Even full faculty, if they're presenting their research, they'll do a poster, because it's you can fit a lot of information there, and conferences are a lot of fun. You get to travel. Sometimes you can get funding depending on if it's whatever school you're at. Typically they have funding for conferences. I had to use this at UNLV. Basically, I wanted to go to this conference, but I needed money for a flight and a hotel, and I basically filled out this grant application. And through the universities and schools, it's usually pretty simple. But I had to show a couple of screenshots on Google of what prices are, and I said, hey, I'd love it if you guys could give me $600 so I could go to this conference. And then they were like, we'll give you $400. And I'm like, okay, that kind of works. So usually there are options for you if you were thinking of doing that. But I've been to a handful of different places just in the last few years. So here in this image, let's see, there's, where was that? Denver, Reno, let's see, Tempe, so just over in Arizona. We had a conference here in Las Vegas. There's actually been a few. I've been to Cleveland. I feel like there's definitely more. Why am I blanking? But I got to travel a bit around Austin. There was a conference just a couple months ago. It was in Baltimore. I didn't get to go to that one. I've been really busy, but I kind of wanted to go, but I didn't get to. So that's fine. And you can see most of these I'm standing at a poster. There's one where I'm giving a talk. You can see me at a podium talking. And I was actually, that conference was the one that was in Las Vegas, and I was giving a presentation to anthropologists about what I do at the medical school and how these things kind of overlap. So that was interesting. Moving along, you can see with more travel, I actually was able to go to Ethiopia in 2020. It's so crazy. That doesn't seem like it's that long ago, but it's been 5 years. I had an incredible experience there. I got to work at the National Museum. Basically, long story short, myself and another graduate student in my lab, there was actually only 2 of us at the time, our advisor said, hey, I want to send you guys to Ethiopia. Here's a giant 3D scanner and printer I just got delivered to our lab. You have 6 months to learn how to use this, and then you have to learn how to teach it to someone else. And so we focused on that for 6 months, and we got to travel there. We were there probably travel time was probably 15 days, but we were actually there working for 11 days. And it was meeting people there. It was such an incredible experience. The food was incredible. If you have a chance to go to an Ethiopian restaurant in Vegas, there are quite a few. I've been to a few. Very, very good. And if you've had Ethiopian food, you know what I'm talking about. It's delicious. The wine there was really good. I'm not a smoker now, but I was a cigarette smoker years ago when I traveled, and I was able to even smoke Ethiopian cigarettes, and they were really good. I brought a bunch back home. I brought like coffee home for my friends. I brought cigarettes home. The coffee there, oh my God, the coffee there, it's a whole different experience. I could go on and on about my time in Ethiopia. It was amazing. The next few slides, I just kind of threw up for just like fun conversation, you know, some shows that I've been into. I've been getting into Bridgerton. I kind of got into it late. I kind of binged it, but my sister was really into it for a few years and was like, you have to watch it. And I was like, I don't know if that's really my type of show. But then I ended up, you know, really getting into it. And then Outlander, I didn't even know. I binged this one recently too. I had no idea what the show was about. And then when I found out, I was like, I have to watch it. It's about time travel. I don't know if you guys knew that. Anything time travel, TV show, movie, I'm hooked. I'm obsessed. I love time travel stuff. It's always very interesting. And then a classic drama, A Million Little Things. This one's so good. If you haven't seen this show, it's like, I think it's 5 seasons. It's so well written. If you like those types of shows where you get to see like, you know, these human connections and situations, and you know, you get to dive into these characters, like that's the kind of show. And there's way more to it than that, but it's excellent. And then next slide, my all-time favorite show ever will always be at the top of my list, is a show called The OA on Netflix. And if you've seen this show, you know what I'm talking about. It is the most incredible, creative, like innovative idea. I think that I've never seen anything that will compare to this, and unfortunately Netflix canceled it. Isn't that always the case, whether it's, you know, a streaming platform or whatever, a channel, that they will, you're like, oh, I found the show I really like, and then you're like, oh, it got canceled, and the ones that they keep producing, you're like, this is what you're spending money on? It's so frustrating. Anyway, I love this show so much, and I think that everyone should at least experience a little bit of this incredible story, that I will give you guys extra credit if you watch just the first episode. Watch the first episode. It's on Netflix. Give me like a 1-page write-up, you know, to summarize a couple things so I know you watched it. And then, you know, at the end, give me a couple sentences on your thoughts. What do you think about it, you know? And this is unrelated to class, but like I said, it's such a good thing. I would definitely give extra credit for that. Yeah, so like I said, just 1 page. And then tell me you're not going to get hooked, because every semester I do this and I'll have students like, oh, I'm hooked now. I binge watched it in like 1 day. Oh my God, it's crazy. So highly recommend. Then I just threw up a handful of other shows. My boyfriend and I have this Excel spreadsheet, and then we both have lists of TV shows, and we both take turns saying, okay, now we're going to watch this one. And we just binge, you know, different shows. And so you can see my list, some of my favorites. Frasier, my all-time favorite sitcom. My boyfriend had never seen it, and he's like a huge fan now. And then an example, there's another one on Netflix called Dark. That's about time travel. That one's, you need like a family tree diagram to follow along sometimes, but it's so well done. Next slide. Oh, so I do love to bake and cook. Thanksgiving is definitely my favorite holiday. I love all the baking. I'll spend like 2 days just baking, right? Cooking. I love the family, and then like I love. Well, everyone loves the holidays for the most. Like not everyone, but most people do, right? But there's something about Thanksgiving. I just have really good memories of childhood. And I am a vegan. I've been vegan for a little over 12 years now, and got some funny memes if you're following along on the PowerPoint. Silly, you know. There's always that trope that, oh, like, you know, vegans always tell everyone they're vegan, but I swear to God, like, I usually don't really talk about it, and whenever it gets brought up, this happened the other day. This happens often. Is that, like, let's say I'm hanging out with a friend and we're meeting some of their friends, like some new people, right? This happened with my friend the other day. You know, we're having brunch with some of her other girlfriends that I hadn't met. And so we all get there, we get to our table, and then they're like, oh yeah, this is my friend Alicia, she's a vegan. And I get we're gonna order food, but it was like not pertinent to anything, but I feel like a lot of people find it, like they'll just say that about me, so anyway, it's just kind of funny. Next slide, I love to crochet. I'm always crocheting. I'm always crocheting. I'm definitely one of those people that cannot just sit still. You know, even when I'm trying to relax and watch a movie, I'm like, okay, gotta be like crocheting, doing something, right? I've been that way since I was young. But I had an Etsy shop for a while. I still have it. It's active. I sell things here and there. When I was younger, like in my 20s, I definitely sold a bit, scarves and blankets and stuff. But I crochet all the time. So every Christmas or birthday, my friends and family are getting blankets and stuff for me. So they love it. Super into puzzles. Yes, on the slide it says I'm obsessed with puzzles. I am obsessed with puzzles. I'm reaching for my drink, not a puzzle. I'm obsessed with puzzles. At any given time, I have a puzzle actively going in my house, either like on the dining room table or the coffee table. Like, I'm not exaggerating, I have one right now. I always have a puzzle going. My boyfriend he'll kind of go through like time periods where he's like really into a puzzle with me for like, or a couple puzzles he'll do with me for like a week or so, and then he won't for a while, but I'm always doing puzzles. Because it's like the one thing that I can look forward to, and like, okay, my work day's over, and I'm just going to chill, like a glass of wine, we got something on TV, I got a little puzzle going, it's the best. And we frame a lot of them too, and we have like these vaulted ceilings, 2-story house, and so we have framed puzzles, not all of them, but some of the really pretty ones, so we just have this all really cool art. The next slide is some of my favorite books. I could list, my top 20, I just threw in a couple, but probably one of my all-time like top 3 would be Richard Dawkins' The Selfish Gene, and actually we'll be talking about that in this class like briefly, and if you had me or will have me in the 102, like the lecture part, I definitely talk about this in class. It's a very good book. I had to read this for my undergrad, but I read it again later. I love this book. And it's kind of written for the layperson. So you could go into, whatever, Barnes & Noble or go on Amazon, and you can pick up this book and you could probably read it, like, and understand, what he's talking about. Especially after you take maybe like my class or maybe another anthro class, a lot of this will make sense. It's very interesting, very interesting. And I love Agatha Christie. I love mysteries. I started reading Agatha Christie when I was really young. Like, my grandma got me into her when I was like 7 or 8. And then as a teenager, I was definitely one of those people who, like, I always had a book on me. And then, now that I became an academic and all my reading is like academic reading. But I've been trying to kind of get back into like fun reading for me is still like, sciencey stuff. But Agatha Christie, I'll throw in a good mystery, when I can. The next slide, I love wine. I grew up in a little town called Lodi, California. And if you've ever heard of it, it's very famous for its wineries. We have like wine tours, and every year there's a grape festival where everything's like grape and wine. And so we kind of grew up that way. And just in general, like, if of course you are of drinking age, wine is delicious, and it's definitely nice to have a glass of wine at the end of the day. My 2 dogs, Waffle and Alice, they are 15 and 16, and they're still those are both recent pictures of them, if you're following along on the PowerPoint, and they're smart. Everyone says that about their dogs. They're the best. They're so cute. They're the smartest. And everyone's true, right? Everyone's telling the truth. But my dog Alice, like, she's one of those dogs. You don't always encounter dogs like this, but sometimes you will, where like you will look into their eyes and they're looking back at you in a way that you don't expect from a dog. She's very smart. You can tell there's like, there's something going on. And then I just have some other pictures of some, fun pictures with friends and family, just to show you guys I'm a normal person, And my nieces, I don't have any children, but my sister has 3 daughters, and so I get a lot of, niece auntie time, which I cherish. And I've been thinking about them a lot lately. They live in Oregon, and it's been since the holidays, and this is probably one of the longest time periods we've gone without hanging out, without me seeing them. So hopefully get to see them soon. Probably for the 4th of July, I'm thinking. And then the next slide, something a little more personal. I am very open about this part of my life. I feel like it's not something that should be hidden. I want to be an open book. If any of you ever have questions, concerns, a story you want to share with me, I'm very open about this experience. And also because it's still kind of part of my life. In 2017, I was diagnosed with cancer, and I had no family history of any cancer. I was in my 30s. I wasn't, I was young and fairly healthy, and found a lump and went through the process of getting it, biopsied and all that, and came back, and I went through serious treatment, chemotherapy, 2 surgeries, radiation, and unfortunately I'm one of the small percentages of people where I have permanent nerve damage from radiation, and some other musculoskeletal issues from chemotherapy. So when I say it's like still an active part of my life, sometimes you might see me with my cane if I'm having a bad day, or I have a sling I wear on my arm sometimes because the cancer had spread into my arm, and so I had to get, they had to do surgery on like my arm and my breast. So, I still struggle with that a little bit, but usually, I'm in pretty good spirits about it. So if you ever see me with my cane, you don't have to be like, oh my God, what happened? I mean, you can, but I'll just be honest with you. It's not really a big deal for me. Like, it's just, you got to keep moving, right? And you can see like the evolution of my hair. Like I said, or I don't know if I said this. I'm a natural brunette, and I haven't been a brunette since like 2019. But in my head, when I think of myself, I still think of like myself as a brunette. But then I see myself in the mirror and I'm like, oh, I have blonde hair. But you can see the evolution of my hair going from long and brown, and then growing it back and deciding to go blonde. And I honestly feel like blonde hair suits me better. You can even kind of see in the picture with the dark hair. When I had long dark hair, it was cute. I could pull off dark hair, but I think I just look better as a blonde. And then the meme on the next slide, pretty much, normal life in my 30s, and then cancer comes along. Gosh, I'm not the only one with a story like that. It just changes. It literally changed so many things about my life, which later on I can maybe get into if anyone has any questions about that. And that's kind of it. I have a section on the PowerPoint typically where I ask some questions to you guys, just to kind of get a gauge of what things maybe you're knowledgeable in terms of coming into the class, and or topics we might discuss. I kind of get your opinion on a few things, but since we don't really have you guys here to do that, it's not really quite the same. But we can just kind of go through them kind of quickly. Like I said, kind of food for thought. So usually I would say, raise your hand if you have a Tinder account, or if you have ever used a dating app. So in this class, and especially in the lecture, we really get into like sexual selection, like humans, primates, mammals. And so this is always an interesting, like from the human perspective, about how like sexual selection, mate selection works for us as primates. How many of you are married? How many of you want to be married? So this is kind of interesting in terms of the cultural aspect of that. How many of you like never want to be married? And then some questions about like monogamy or non-monogamy. So we're going to talk about this with primates. Humans were primates, and there are kind of categories that primates will fall into, either monogamous, polygynous, polyandrous, and so and human examples of not just monogamy, but like polygyny and polyandry, and other primates as well. Do you want to have children or do you not? This is always an interesting question in terms of like the evolutionary perspective. And in fact, I did my master's research on this. I'll probably bring it up one day when we get to that section about reproduction and stuff. I'll probably talk to you about my master's research. And then I asked questions about what generation you're from. So I'm a Gen Xer. I'm like a young Gen Xer. And the meme, it's Gen X, why does no one acknowledge us? And then AARP is like, hey girl. Do you guys know what AARP is? You should Google it. And then another just funny slide about just aging in general. You'll laugh. You'll think, I'll never get old. I remember taking this class and thinking, I'm going to be, 22 forever. You don't really, in your mind you're going to get older, but it just doesn't click until you actually are older, and you're like, oh my God, that went by so fast. How am I in my 30s and my 40s? Like, how did it happen? Every year goes by faster. Trust me, cherish your youth when you don't have any aches and pains or, whatever. You don't have Tums in your purse at all times. And then how many of you would consider yourself a millennial? I mean, these dates, it depends on the source you're looking at, whether it's, 85 to 2000 or 86 to 2002 or whatever, but these are just some general and really it's not even just the year, it's, you can really classify these generations in terms of what was going on culturally for them. Like a really good marker between Gen X and millennial is, did you have a cell phone while you were still a minor? Like I had my first cell phone when I was 19. I was already out of high school. So like I said, I'm kind of a young Gen Xer, but I didn't have that experience of being like a minor in school. Like now, like my nieces in junior high, like they have cell phones, right? So it's a totally different socio-cultural experience. And then how many of you would consider yourself Gen Z? And then how many of you, next slide, how many of you are thinking of being an anthropology major or are already? I'll tell you, when I took this class, a long time ago, many years ago, I did not know, that's the next slide. How many of you don't really know what anthropology is? I did not know what anthropology was. All I knew was that I had to take a science with a lab to fulfill my associates, and I didn't want to take biology, and I didn't want to take chemistry, and so I took anthropology, and I ended up changing, I was a fashion major. I ended up changing my major, staying at community college an extra semester to get the prereqs. Instead of going to art school, which I had plans to do, I went going to the local university, CSU Sacramento, and then ended up changing my whole life journey, you know, because I took this class and I just was like, this is so interesting. I want to still be learning more of this. I need to be involved in this idea, this topic. It's just so interesting. So if you're signing up for this class and you thought, I don't even really know what anthropology is, like I was that person, so don't think that's going to be a detriment to you in being successful in this class or learning at all. And then some other questions. These are more kind of pertinent to when I teach the cultural course, but are you religious? I mean, we do get into like early forms of religion, like Neanderthals and religion in this class a little bit. And then some more questions about like mating stuff. So do you think the man should pay on the first date? Like considering like a heterosexual scenario, do you think the man should pay on the first date? Should you split the check? Some of the students will say, some of my students have said in the past, well, whoever asked the other person, they should be the one to pay. So interesting, you know, we all have different opinions about that, right? And like, do you live with your significant other? Most of you are pretty young, but you know, you could still live with. And then some more sciencey classes, or sciencey questions like, how many of you know the steps to the scientific method? Or what's the difference between mitosis and meiosis, which we will talk about in this class? And then how many of you know the difference between an ape and a monkey? Talk about that as well. And then that kind of wraps that up. Yeah, so like I said, you know, continue to watch these videos. I'll try to keep them at a half hour or less. You know, in the lecture, ideally you're getting the fuller version. I know that for many of you, you had the lecture, you know, 2 years ago or whatever. It's been a while, so that's why I do have lectures to kind of give you like a recap, but I'm not gonna make them full, like, you know, like hour and 10 minutes or something. There will be a couple where I probably will take a little longer, only because I'm gonna be showing you bones, and so because it's a little more hands-on of a demonstration, those recordings might be a little longer, but I'm really gonna try. Like this one's at 33 minutes. This would probably be like the max of where I want them. I don't want to overwhelm you with a bunch of lectures you have to watch at home, right? Half hour's kind of like you're still paying attention, right? Okay, so like I said, go ahead and watch the next one. I'm gonna talk about the syllabus, and you know, I will see you guys in class. I'm recording these a couple weeks out, like 2 weeks before class starts, so you know, hopefully I get all these recordings done, and then I will see you guys on the first day.